enjoy a dramatic monologue that is titled, Where is the Moon? This was written by Anne Boyles and it will be performed by Bill McFadden. If you've had a chance to look at some of the art and read some of the text panels around the room, you'll know that the story of the Bab and the Bab's life was very short and dramatic. And at one point in his life, the Persian authorities exiled him to a very remote area. And we will hear the story of one of his prison wardens.
I'd like to thank the Baha'i community for inviting me to do this. It's funny, when I first came to Prince Edward Island years ago, 50 years ago, a friend of mine took me to the Donnelly's house, and that's where I first heard about the Baha'is. And my oldest daughter, Elizabeth's mother was a Baha'i, as was her stepfather, Eric. So I know a bit about the faith and the history. And a year or two ago, I was asked to do something for the community at the Florence Simmons Hall. And I had such a great time, I said, if they ask me again, I will say yes. The offshoot of that is after I did that, Billy Graham's grandson called me, and he was doing something here, and he asked if I'd do the kids' show. So I'm not too sure what this is going to lead to. And I'm afraid my mind isn't quite as elastic as it used to be, so I wasn't able to memorize all this, but I'll try to read it. Okay, thank you. Visions, dreams, nonsense. I never gave them any credit. Never gave anybody who talked about them any time. Who would believe such foolishness? I am a man of facts, of things, of action. No time for visions. Or so I would have said at one time. It's all his fault. Or is it fault? It all began with that devil, Haji Mirza Akasi. Since he became Grand Vizier to the Shah, he's been nothing but trouble. And now he sent his biggest problem for me to look after. Well, Akasi's from here, from this God-forsaken place far away from the capital, near the river Araxes and the mountains of Azerbaijan. This place of mountains, torrents, and desert, and bleakness. Maku, they call it. Maku. Where is the moon? Literally, that's what it means. Because the mountains are so high and so steep, there's little sunlight and less moonlight. In the castle there, Akasi said, pointing his bony finger up to the fortress among the highest peaks, we must contain this problem. It's the perfect place. And you, Ali Khan, he dug that same finger like a dagger into my chest. You will be responsible. You are the governor of that prison. You will keep the problem contained, or... Akasi had this habit of letting his sentences trail off ominously like that. And so, the problem came to Maku. He climbed the steep and twisted road to the town in the company of armed soldiers, and then struggled even farther up the cliff to the fortress above. Well, at first I did my best to fulfill Akasi's orders. I have my family's well-being to think of after all, and we've had dangerous characters here before, until they quietly perished from the cold or the heat in summer, or went mad from the isolation. Strict confinement, Akasi said. No visitors, lest the place be infected with this new heresy. And God knows this place is enough of a tinderbox already. We know how to treat interlopers in our midst. We've resisted them for 1,000 years. So, the problem arrived. And I have to say, I was surprised. I'd expected some political rival of Acaci's But there came only this young man of mild disposition and gentle manners. As a steed, I could see from his green turban, but not like so many others of his type with their arrogance and assumption of privilege. No, this young man was different. I could tell straight away from his countenance. But an order is an order. So I installed him in our special quarters reserved for guests such as he. Walls of mud, no doors, no privacy. So cold in the winter that it would freeze the water in his wash basin. In the summer, like a frying pan. And not one candle would be given to light and relieve the long hours of blackness in the night. I posted 2 guards there with 2 dogs, and I thought no more about it. Until I heard the guards were telling the people in the village below about how gentle, how wise, how refined the prisoner was. How no matter how harshly he was treated, he returned to only kindness and love. Preposterous. Well, I tried to stem the tide of this kind of talk, but to no avail. Soon the farmers were gathering at the foot of the cliff, looking up to the castle to catch a glimpse of him. And people would send words to the guards, begging for his blessing. When they had disputes or quarrels, they would stand below the fortress and implore each other to tell the truth in his name. In the name of this prisoner who was in my charge. Well, I'd drive them away, I'd threaten them, but they always came back. Well, Acaci was right about one thing, it seemed. It was like an infection that was spreading like the plague through the town. And who knew how far beyond? But if it was a contagion, it was a contagion of kindness, goodness, truthfulness, of reverence. Well, what was I to do in such a situation? I had my orders. But I knew very well the source of those orders. I knew his character, I knew his deceit, his ruthlessness, his blind ambition. And I began to wonder why his hatred of this gentle, inspiring young man was so deep and so relentless. But of course I couldn't tell anybody that. I couldn't let any of the prisoner's followers through the gates of the fortress. I had my orders. I kept the doors locked from dusk to daylight to keep the problem in and everyone else out. So then, how could it possibly be that this morning, as I was riding out before dawn to do my inspection, I saw the prisoner down by the river, outside the fortress? How dare he disobey my command? Well, I was all set to haul him over the coals, but he was praying. So I decided to let him finish before I dragged him back. So I watched him. And it struck me that in spite of the months of imprisonment he had endured, he looked completely serene, lost in his prayer, and completely unaware that I was there. Well, this annoyed me for some reason, and I made a move to approach him and grab him by the collar. But all of a sudden I was seized with a fear of disturbing him. So I remounted my horse and rode back to the fortress. What idiot guard had let him out? I'd give him the gears instead. But when I arrived at the fortress gate, I found both the inner and the outer gates locked tight. I pounded on them. The guards admitted me, surprised to find me there at that hour. No, they assured me. The gates had been secured, shut since the previous evening, and the prisoner was in the fortress as usual. But I had seen him by the river with my own eyes. Was I going mad? I went to him, utterly confounded. And as he looked at me with that gentle but penetrating gaze, a line from a poem by Hafiz flashed through my mind. O Zephyr, shouldst thou pass by the banks of the Araxes, implant a kiss on the earth of that valley and make fragrant thy breath. Well, frankly, I really never cared much for poetry, and I never understood what he was going on about. But looking at this young man before me, and thinking about what I'd seen down by the river, about how the whole atmosphere of the place had changed since his arrival, yes, fragrant was a good word for it. It occurred to me that I was witnessing the words of Hafiz come to life. Because whoever this prisoner was, he was no ordinary man. And it became clear to me at the same time that I, Ali Khan, the governor of the fortress, was in truth more of a captive than the one within its walls. I was a slave to a devil who cares only for himself and his grasp on the Shah. A Qasim. Well, I'm finished with him, come what may. And now, you'll have to excuse me. I'm done with locked doors. Let all who wish to come to Maku come freely. Where is the moon? That's not a question anymore. No, the night is fled, and here is the dawn.